What's up, passionate Pokemon players? I'm Brian, and we're here for another episode of the Hawks Pokemon Nest. We're back on it. We can't quit these Team Rocket decks. They're just too much fun to make. So this time we've got Team Rocket's Crobat teaming up with Team Rocket's Tyranitar for a bench spread damage style deck. It's super fun. I've had a lot of fun with this deck, so we're going to get into the strategy, strengths, and weaknesses of the deck. Of course, before that, as usual, we'll go into each card of the deck and why I included it, what it does, and then finally we'll get into some of the other cards to consider swapping in or out. So let's get into it. Alright, here we are. It's hard to choose what exactly, but I think Crobat, if you had to really choose a leader, it would be Crobat as the leader with Tyranitar second as kind of the Robin of the deck. And we'll kind of talk about why, right? Okay, so let's check out what this bad boy does over here, Team Rocket's Crobat EX. It has an ability called Biting Spree. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may choose two of your opponent's Pokemon and put 2 damage counters on them. So basically, when he evolves, 2 damage counters on 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. Doesn't sound like anything crazy at first, but if you're able to do this a lot, we're able to do a lot of damage. And we'll talk a little bit more about some other ways to do it. But then, first off, we have Assassin's Return. So this does 120 damage. And then, you may put this Pokemon into your hand, discard all cards attached to this Pokemon. So, you're going to unfortunately discard any energy attached to the Pokemon, to Crobat, when you use this move if you return to hand. However, you do get these Team Rocket's Zubat and Golbat back to hand, which can come in handy and allow you to deal even more damage, right? The other aspect that makes it so great, obviously, is the Crobat EX has 310 HP, solid amount. He's going to be able to survive a few attacks. So let's say you attack, leave him out there the first time your opponent attacks, they're going to KO him the next turn. You can just use Assassin's Return, boom, return to hand without the damage. Your opponent doesn't get the prize card for that. So it's what makes this deck kind of tricky and can come from behind, because sometimes they just can't knock him out, at least getting 2 prizes for it. So then let's go backwards a little bit. So we have Team Rocket's Golbat. So Golbat, rather than Biting Spree, just has Sneaky Bite. So when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. So this one, you're only going to get 1 damage, or 1 Pokemon damage, but you get 2 counters. But, I mean, let's say you go Golbat into Crobat the next turn, that's 40 damage on 1 Pokemon. Not bad at all. It does have Confuse Ray. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused, so it's not the worst move, honestly, if you really have to use it in a pinch. And let's look at this art for a minute. Sometimes it's really hard to kind of admire the art for like non-full arts, but I mean, this is really nice, isn't it? Anyway, alright, let's move back one more. We got the Team Rocket's Zubat. 50 damage, Poison Spray. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. This one, you do not want to get into the active, right? Each of them has the 1 retreat cost if you really need. Obviously, you're going to want to use the Assassin's Return. And so basically, your strategy is just getting Zubat into Golbat into Crobat. Notice that you do have to play them from your hand, so you can't use something like a TM Evolution to evolve and put the damage counters on. And ideally, unless you really need it, you also don't want to use a Rare Candy to evolve them either, because you kind of skip this stage of getting 2 damage. So kind of keep those things in mind as we're going. So let's kind of move backwards here, and we have the Team Rocket's Larvitar. So here's our other pair of the deck, and kind of the same thing. The first 2 evolutions, well, maybe more so the first one, isn't extremely pertinent, right? The Larvitar's the only option because it's the Team Rocket. 70 HP, Mountain Munch. Discard the top card of your opponent's deck. Cool, if you have to use it. Team Rocket's Pupitar has 100 HP. This one is actually pretty nice in a pinch. It's Explosive Ascension. Does 30 damage, and then you're able to search your deck for a card that evolves from this Pokemon and evolve it, right? So you basically can evolve straight into the Tyranitar if this gets stuck in the active. And now this Pokemon is not here for its Demolition Tackle attack. We're not going to use that. We're not going to be playing any ground energy. We're going to go straight to Sandstream. And this is where things can get pretty crazy pretty fast for your opponent. Sandstream during Pokemon checkup. If this Pokemon is inactive, put 2 damage counters on each of your opponent's basic Pokemon. So not bad. So let's say you get this guy stuck inactive. You have a Pupitar in hand, evolve him, Explosive Ascension, deal 30, and then Sandstream is going to trigger that turn because it's or technically the beginning of your opponent's turn because it's checkup. So they're going to all take 2 damage for all of their basics. So, oh boy, if you got an opponent with a lot of basics, then they are going to struggle out here. And from what I've seen, honestly, like these days, in the current beta, like your opponent is playing a bunch of basic Pokemon. The kind of caveat of this is a lot of them are playing like Monkey Dories and they're going to move that up. But to be honest, what I've found is like eventually if you can get the Tyranitar, the Golbat, and the Crobat, like your opponent's going to get overwhelmed. They can only move 30 damage in a turn, where you can deal, let's say you get him in the active. Let's say your opponent only has 1 basic Pokemon. Let's say they have 2, okay? They have the Monkey Dory and something else. You're going to deal 20 to each of those basics, 40. You're going to deal, let's say you evolve one Golbat and you put another 20, and you evolve a Crobat and you put another 40. Oh, that's a lot of damage. The Monkey Dory is going to start to get overwhelmed eventually, and you're going to be able to knock Pokemon out. Now, one thing that really hurts this deck is bench protection. So let's talk about how we're going to protect our own bench. I threw in 1 of the Team Rocket's Articuno, right? So every other Pokemon here I have 3 of. 3 of each of the Team Rocket's Pokemon, except just 1 of these. It's not the most important thing out there. You know, it is nice to have prevent all effects of attacks used by your opponent's Pokemon to your basic Team Rocket's Pokemon. So really what we're just doing is protecting our Larvitars and our Zubats. Especially the Zubat only has 50 HP, so it can get one-shot by something like a Dragapult, which is always on my mind. So really helps you do that. It also only has 1 energy retreat, so I will occasionally put it in a pinch in the active. Before we move on to, I've got one more thing to talk about here, now that we've introduced all of the Pokemon. So remember the Crobat EX has Assassin's Return. So you can hit for 120 and return that Pokemon to your hand if you think it's going to be knocked out next turn. Well, guess what we can do? From there, we have to choose a new Pokemon. We could throw that Team Rocket's Tyranitar into the active. Sandstream is going to activate during their checkup, and they're going to take 20 damage to each of their basics. Now, we do want to think about the fact that he may get stuck in there. He's a 3 retreat cost. He's 180 HP, so he's not going to survive a lot. But even if he gets knocked out, your opponent's going to take 1 prize card versus taking multiple. And the funny thing about this is my opponent a lot of times is so worried about my Golbats and Crobats that they're going to focus on bossing up 1 and KOing it, which can sometimes play into my favor when maybe they took the 20 damage. I won't put him back into the active to start my turn, but I'll be able to have some flexibility to be able to attack again with Crobat if I need to. So pretty fun stuff. And moving on to our trainer cards, we've got Buddy PAF, and I only have 3 of them this time rather than my usual 4 because we do have other ways of pulling those basics up to bench. Night Stretcher is always a good one, I think, especially here where we want to be pulling our Crobats and especially our Golbats back, and whatever else. I'm going to run 4 of these. Now, Prime Catcher, I think, is just the perfect A-spec for this deck. It kind of helps us with the switch. You know, it gives us an extra switch card so that we can move a Crobat either in or out of active, move our Tyranitar out of active or in if we're kind of not ready to go. So that's really good, and then obviously put our opponent in a bad position. Sometimes I'm just going to trap them. When they got a Pokemon with high retreat cost, all right, well, that bad boy's staying in the active spot while I just kind of spread damage across you. Okay, Rare Candy. I've got 3 Rare Candies. I don't want to use it again on my Zubat evolution line, but I have no issues at all using it on my Tyranitar line. It's a lot easier than getting a Pupitar if I need to. Okay, Super Rod. I just put 1 Super Rod in. It's another one of those cards where I don't really need, but if something starts to go awry and I just get a bunch of my Pokemon going into the discard, we definitely want to be able to recycle them. Okay, switch, I'm going to go with 3 switch cards because it is important to be able to have some flexibility to move Crobat and Tyranitar in and out of the active spots. Team Rocket's Transceiver. Now this one's a nice one. What I noticed about it is it gives me some options, so I was able to reduce a couple of the Team Rocket's cards that are a little bit more situational, and just throw in the Transceiver at 3 so that I'm able to basically pull whichever one I need for the turn, whether it's the Proton that we're going to talk about, Ariana, or what's the other one? I've got the Archer. Alright, so we've got the Team Rocket's Venture Bomb. This one's one I actually really wish I could fit 4 of them into this deck. I mean, I'm tempted to remove the Super Rod and throw it in there, but you know, we can't do that in this day and age, so whatever. We got 3 of them. It's such a good card in this deck. Now, before I ran it with my Annihilate deck, and it kind of ran it in an odd way, hoping that I would get Tails and damage the Annihilate line. But in this case, no, I want my opponent to get damaged. It's such a crazy card that, you know, when we're already spreading damage, sometimes that's the difference between one knockout or no knockouts in a turn. And really, like, when it comes down to it, like, we're racing against the clock against some of these evolution lines. If we let it get to the next turn, and maybe it's a lot of times it's like a 70 HP Pokemon, I'm gonna do 60. Well, Rocket's Venture Bomb can knock it out and then prevent that evolution from happening. This card has won me games, many a game, and it's just a perfect card for this deck. Ultra Ball, Tried and True 3. Boss's Orders, I actually only have room for 2 of them here, and I don't find it too much of an issue to really. It'd be nice if I could fit 3, but, you know, I've got the Prime Catcher in there that kind of acts as that 3rd one. Right, then the Team Rocket's Archer, I'm running 2 of these as well. I was at 3, but 2 works. You know, it's just a good kind of unfair stamp in a way. When I'm getting knocked out, shuffle cards, get me out of a bad hand, and also put my opponent in position where they're only starting with 3. So really good there. Team Rocket's Ariana is just, this card is just ridiculous in Team Rocket's decks. This card alone, like, really, like, gives them the engine that they need to go. So Ariana, you always want to run 4 of these, at least in my opinion, in this deck. And then the Team Rocket's Proton. What am I running here? Do I have 3 or just 2 of them? Proton, where are you at in my list? I don't know, it's somewhere in there. I've got 2 of them. All right, so what, because I've got the Poffins too. All right, then the Team Rocket's Energy, we're going to run 4, and then I've got 4 of just the other dark energies. Initially, I was going to run 4 of the ground energy to give my Tyranitar a chance to attack, but I thought, you know, it's just not worth the investment, and the fact that I also only have 4 of the Rocket's energies that I'm using on my Crobat, and the fact that I discard them when I bring them back to hand means sometimes I need more, so I ran 4 of these bad boys in there. In terms of strategy, strengths, and weaknesses, of course, as with many of my decks, we're flooding the bench. We really want to get that bench flooded, and with that, like, I think you're okay with it. Let's talk about prioritization. You know, if you can get 2 of the Tyranitars, great, but at least 1, and you really want to have like 2 to 3 at one point, at every point in time of the Zubat evolution lines. You want to be able to evolve every single turn, because the more that you can't, the more you don't. So if you don't need the Articuno, kind of figure that out quickly, and then that way you've got the 2 Tyranitars and 3 of your Zubat lines on the bench, and then obviously 1 in active. If you do get the Rocket's Tyranitar in active, then you want to start working on getting a second one out there, and then kind of go from there. And evolve everyone. Like, every single turn we want to be evolving, so that we can make sure that we're spreading damage across the board, right? And then we're deciding on who's active. You know, is it going to be Tyranitar? Is it going to be Crobat? Or is it even going to be just somebody who's going to be a sacrificial lamb for a turn? Also consider things like that, you know. If you can't do any damage and you know somebody's getting knocked out, you're going to have to be strategic there, right? Okay, now the strengths is just the damage spread. We are spreading a ton of damage throughout this match, and it really, like things, I've been at the point where things have looked like really bad. Like, my opponent's down to like 2 prize cards, and I haven't taken any yet because we're just dealing, you know, 40 a turn, and then all of a sudden I'm taking 4 prize cards in a turn, because I'm able to just finally add up that damage. Like, it's such a sneaky deck that it's crazy. And then the fact that we also return to hand is also crazy, especially late game when we can start doing things like continuous, like just returning a Crobat to hand, putting another Crobat out there, and just going from there when we're at 2 prize can really throw your opponents off if they're not able to get boss's orders in hand or things like that to just pull somebody up. Make sure that you're careful with it as well, and don't, you know, it's not a good idea to retreat a Crobat. You want to always get that Crobat back into your hand, right? So that they can't boss it up when you're at 2 prizes and get game, right? And the draw power is really good because of that Team Rocket's Ariana. There's plenty of ways to get out of bad hands, and the Team Rocket's Transceiver is just kind of, in a way, it gives you 8 copies of the Ariana because you're able to get that. And then, like, make sure you use it strategically too, right? If somebody's knocked out, don't use an Ariana. Try to use an Archer unless you just know that you're going to need 8 cards in hand, because that's only good in that case. And we want to save as many of the Arianas as possible so that you could just continuously be bringing that hand up every single turn. Right? Now, what are the weaknesses? It does really small damage. So if your opponent is able to get you and just rush you and deal big damage to you, like for example, especially lightning decks are just our biggest weakness, because Crobat, even though it's a dark Pokemon, gets the flying trait, and so lightning is just a really tough matchup. Grass isn't quite as bad, but they are going to sometimes focus on your Tyranitar if they're playing grass because he's weak to grass. But I mean, this is a 1 prizer, so we're not too worried about that, right? Bench protection, we don't have too much on our end, but what I mean on bench protection this time is obviously if your opponent has bench protection, it can be an issue. Making sure, like, if they evolve, if they get too many Terras up there, we're not able to hit them on their bench, or any other things like that to protect, like maybe another Team Rockets deck running Articuno. That can be an issue for us because this deck relies strictly on that. Like, you're probably not going to win if you're just, you know, only able to deal 120 damage a turn with Assassin's Return. It's just not going to work, right? And then we also have to think about energy management. Energy management is an issue because if we are going to use too many Assassin's returning to hand, then our Team Rocket's energy is going to go by the wayside. We also don't have a reliable way of getting any energy in our hand. We do have a pretty good draw engine and a couple ways to discard cards from hand, and we're doing so much evolving that usually our hand is small. But, you know, if you just get kind of brick in hand, you might have to wait and shuffle that hand with the Team Rocket's Archer, and then, you know, we don't know if we're going to get energy. So that's one weakness of the deck. In terms of other cards to consider swapping in or out, this is another deck where there's just not a lot of room to change things up. The Team Rockets engine just works best with purely Team Rockets cards in there, so we really want to keep that, especially with the way I've got it built with the Ariana and our Transceiver. You know, these are cards that work with pure Team Rockets Pokemon. But if you want to kind of switch it up and throw a few non-Team Rockets cards in, here's a couple that might be an option. The first one would be the Jacques. Right, search your deck for up to 2 evolution Pokemon. So this one can really turbocharge us in terms of not just evolving, but also like making sure we're dealing some damage. So that's one to think about. It is pretty good because we're doing so much evolving. Then the Kieran, of course. Kieran's always a card I really like. Usually I like Kieran over Switch, but the reason I'm going with Switch is because we want to use our Team Rocket supporters, especially the Ariana. It is nice, though, to have the option of dealing 30 more damage. With a card like Crobat, that can really help us go from 120, which is like really poop, to 150, and then it really helps us knock out other Pokemon. The problem is it's not going to give us too much of a boost unless we use it 2 turns in a row. Like what I'm thinking about are like these stage 1 EXs that are sitting around 280 HP. It's a really common HP. So if you use the Kieran twice, that gets you up to 300 2 turns in a row. But really, like, is it giving us that much of a boost? We're going to hit for 150 and then 120, which is going to get us 270 over 2 turns. So the math ain't really mathing with Kieran in this case. So I just made sure to throw in the switch cards. Now, another interesting one to go with would be Surfer, because it does fulfill two things for us. It lets us switch out, and then it is a nice little draw engine there, giving us the ability to draw up to 5. So, not terrible, but another one I'm not going to go with. Another really fun one, I mean, maybe not, it's not that fun, but the Great Ball. Now, this deck's one where I actually prefer not to go RNG, as much as I love my RNG decks. The Great Ball. Of course, I'm always wanting to pull Pokemon, and this actually was in the initial iteration of the deck, but I removed it. So we're going to flip a coin. If heads, search for an evolution. Rockets Pokemon. If tails, search for a basic. The thing was that when I was using it, a lot of times I wasn't even getting what I needed. Like, a lot of times I'm getting a basic Pokemon. I'm like, oh, great. I've already got all my basics. I have plenty of ways of grabbing basics. So a 50% chance that when using this card to get an evolution just wasn't doing it for me, so I took it out. Now, here's another fun Team Rockets card that could actually work really well in this deck. This is probably the one that you'd consider the most, which is the Rockets Giovanni. Right, switch your active Rockets Pokemon with one of your bench, and if you do, switch one of your opponent's bench to the active. So this one's one, honestly, like, you may consider just using this over the bosses. It's just, I didn't test it too much because of the forced making us move. So it would be really good, like, if we have a Tyranitar in active, and we took advantage of that during our opponents and our Pokemon checkup, and then we can Giovanni to get our Crobat in there, and then choose whatever our opponents wants. The requirement is, it's just rough, but there are some benefits, like, for example, being able to pull it with the Team Rockets Transceiver, so that would be nice. So it's one to really think about. Honestly, it's another one where I may consider, like, during my next video where I'm testing of just throwing it in there, and let's see if it really helps or hurts us. Alright, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Hawks Pokemon Nest. Hope you enjoyed this episode here with our, I call it like our Rocket Assassin deck. You know, they're really just sneaking up on you and dealing small damage here and there. But if you liked what you saw, make sure you hit that subscribe button and become part of the Hawks Nest, a fearless flock of fabulous folks who love to do what we love making these videos. Make sure that you stay tuned. Next week we are going to, I'm sorry, not next week, but at the end of the week, where we're going to put this to the test on TCG Live. Now, this one should in fact also be the last deck of Destined Rivals. Here at the time of recording, we're a week away from the Black and White Bolt. I am going to probably I'm going to build a deck that doesn't include anything from Black Bolt, White Flare, but we'll be doing battle in that phase during next week. So anyway, until then though, we're going to see you next time.